In 1970, in 1970, I was 8 years old. I didn't know it, but I was 20% of the way along my cathartic journey through our educational system. I was insatiably curious. I couldn't understand why some things were really easy and others I sucked at. And the stuff that was easy, I wanted to go faster. And the stuff I didn't understand, I wanted to go slower. And there was no dial. You couldn't speed up and slow down the classroom. So I was alternately bored or struggling. And as this nice artifact that my mom was kind enough to save for me shows, I didn't exactly fit into the mold. Eventually, I made my way through. I managed to get through high school, through college, get a couple of engineering degrees, and then go on to a career where I kind of picked roles where I could make the rules, and I had the knob, and I could move at my speed. And it wasn't until I moved to Montana and my kids were born that I had to revisit that experience, because they were then thrust into it, or it was thrust upon them, depending on how you look at it. And I started to do some research, because I wanted their experience to be a little different than mine. So I watched some videos, Sir Ken Robinson. I read books, Seth Godin. And I want to be really clear, we are in Bozeman, we are blessed. We have some incredibly passionate and motivated people. Paul and Carrie Cobb, whom I'll talk about later, in our administration. There's incredible people in the system. The problem we have is that it's a system we inherited from the Prussians that was designed for the industrial age. That's not where we are, and it's certainly not where we're going. So I thought, and then, in 2006, I came across this site called Khan Academy. So Sal Khan was in the Bay Area trying to tutor his nieces who were living in the South in math. And so he made some YouTube videos and put them up, and they worked. And people started watching them. And the next thing you know, he had created this platform where they were putting up videos, and people were watching them. And this terminology, the flipped classroom, came into existence, where students would watch video and learn at their own pace. And if any of you have a teenager, I have one, they watch a lot of video, and they absorb a lot of stuff. And so this was an incredible thing, because it also empowered then kids to come into class and spend time with their teachers and their peers, not being lectured to or talked at, but actually working through the stuff they struggled with. Sal wrote a book in 2012 called One World Schoolhouse. If you're at all interested in this subject, if you read one book this year, it should be that one. It's on the table outside. And then Carrie Cobb, who I mentioned earlier. So I've been on the advisory board for the business group at Bozeman High School for 13 years. When I first moved here and worked at Right Now Technologies, one of the executives asked me to go over and join up and see if I could help. So Carrie calls me and she says, "Rob, Henry showed up today and he wants to learn coding. What should we do?" And I said, "Carrie, tell him to come back tomorrow at lunchtime. Tell him to bring his friends. We'll figure it out." So they came, and it was Kyle and Harry and Nick. And I sat them down, and I said, "What's your name? What do you want to learn?" And it was fascinating, because they had all these old school languages that people like me would know. And then in the middle there, you'll see Minecraft. It's a game. And what it turned out they wanted to do was make modifications to Minecraft. Carrie was a little nervous. I'm not sure what the principal is going to think. And I said, "You know what? I'll talk to the principal. They're passionate about this. They'll do great at it." So I called my friend Chris from Right Now and said, "You know Java, come over, teach these kids." So this group of kids, they came every Thursday. They gave up their one free period and came to learn coding. Right? And in the school, the athletes have a posse, and the musicians have a posse. But the coders, they have a different personality type, and they don't always have a posse. So they showed up, and they did. And it was crazy to see the stuff they were doing. They were great at it, and they loved it. And so the Chronicle eventually showed up, and more kids showed up, and the story got bigger. And I thought to myself, this is incredible. If there's this many kids in Bozeman, how many could there be across Montana, in little towns where they don't have access to this kind of stuff? Is there something we could do about that? And then I found a site called code.org, and I looked at this slide, and I saw a $500 billion opportunity. How many times does that come along, right? Greg alluded to earlier, we're 49th? Okay, so we have an opportunity. These are jobs you can do in Montana. There's going to be 1 million more of them by 2020 than we will have turned out candidates for at the current rate we're doing it. So then my friend Liz Markey introduced me to these 2 young kids. Sorry, if your kid's in here, anybody under 30 is a kid, from Stanford. And they had been through the computer science program. Zach, the founder, had done the teaching assistant role. So he had seen where people struggled. And he was determined to change this, take away the nerdy aspect of programming, and make it accessible. So they created a curriculum. It's a dog. You move the dog around in a square. How easy is that? The dog can move. It can do a few simple things. Doesn't seem very complicated, but it's logic. You're learning the underpinnings of programming. I put it in front of my 8-year-old daughter, my 12-year-old son, and they rocked it. And so I talked to Zach, and I talked to Greg. And over the summer, I challenged a group. We had our annual meeting of the Montana programmers. We have 800 programmers across Montana. I said, so I'm challenging you guys. We can teach 500 kids software development in Montana next year. And I got back thinking too small, make it 1,000. And so I bought the domain name, CodeMontana.org. We did a press release, got up at the Economic Summit in Butte on September 17th and announced the program. And the funny things started to happen. Kids started to show up all over the place, right? There's big concentrations where you'd expect them. And there's little pins here and there all over the place. Some of those towns, I bet you there's not 100 people in them. And that student might be the only one with any interest in computers. But now they have a way to get connected. They're online. They're doing it. And in 5 months, we had 1,000 kids. They have written 40,000 computer programs, tested them, and had them graded by mentors online. This is what it looks like at Bozeman High School. You can go there between 8:30 and 9:20 any morning. And there's a room full of kids. This is Dan Hobbs, who's one of the Montana programmers. He works at Wisetail, which is a local startup. And he's mentoring Caitlin. He's helping her improve what she's doing. And 2 things are going on here. She's getting by a roadblock, and she's having a person who does this job every day look at her and say, you got what it takes. You can do this. So, interestingly, since that happened, we have had Montana Tech has come up with $160,000 in scholarships, and University of Montana $90,000 in scholarships. And we just found out the other day that Montana Tech has had a 4-fold increase in the number of applications for their CS program for next year. Now, these are jobs that pay $45,000 to $75,000 a year to start that you can do in your pajamas in your basement if you want to. So where are we going next? 5,000 kids, or 10, or 20. So if you're interested, come talk to me. Thank you.